That sounds like a horrible thing to be. Megan Edwards joins me, sister of Amy Coney Barrett. Megan, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I can't imagine, when you're thinking of your sister, what goes through your body? I'm picturing it would be like a bolt going through me if someone said this about my sister, that she is, you heard his phrase, blank nuts, and that she is Catholic, 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 as if it was a swear word.
I mean, people are entitled to their opinions, but I think what's important for people to know is that, yes, Amy is a person of faith. She prays every day. She and her family go to church together. But I think it's also important to realize that people all across America also are people of faith and also go to church. And to me, I think this is a non-issue. She's been very clear that she will be able to do her job and will apply the Constitution how it is and not impart her own opinions and her own beliefs.
Yeah. There's another person who basically said that the fact that she adopted 2 children from Haiti, and we all had the great experience of seeing her beautiful family in the Rose Garden the other day on TV, and this professor at Boston University said white colonizers adopted black children. They civilized these, quote, savage children in the, quote, superior ways of white people while using them as props in their lifelong pictures of denial, while cutting the biological parents of these children out of the picture of humanity. Knowing your sister and knowing her family and your niece and nephew who were at the White House the other day, what do you think when you hear that?
I think if people knew Amy and knew the sister that I know, they would just see love. Her family is the most important thing to her. Her work life, her home life, everything is so that her children know that they are important. As a matter of fact, when her husband gave a speech at her investiture to the 7th Circuit, I'm pretty sure the quote said, Amy, no one can outlove Amy. And that is what she does with her family. She wakes up early in the morning to get her work done so that she can bake a cake for her children's birthday. And I'm not talking about any little cake. I mean, her kids have requested...
You're making everybody feel
Alaskan,
really...
What's the... Yes, I mean, she spends hours
all the moms
scouring.
across America are like, oh my gosh, good for her.
Yes.
What can you tell us about those 2 children, your niece and nephew, and what brought Amy and her husband Jesse to the decision to adopt those beautiful children?
I honestly have to say that to know her family is to just love everyone. I think really there's nothing different about any of their children except in their own personalities. And they each have their own special place in the family. As for her reasons for adopting, I think that's a question for her. I think, family is a family no matter who's in it and who makes it up. And she needs to be the one to explain what she feels is important in her family. What I can say is that all of my nieces and nephews, not only Amy's, but all of the others also, are all part of our family, and our family is one that's huge. It is. It's big. It's loud, but it's full of love.
One of the things that comes up is the family's affiliation with the group known as People of Praise. Can you explain to people who may have seen this Newsweek article that said that People of Praise was what The Handmaid's Tale was based on, and then at the bottom of the article, they put an asterisk which said, actually, no, this is not the group that this book and movie were based on. It should have been enough to, take that piece completely off their website, but it wasn't. So I'd love to hear in your own words, growing up affiliated with this organization, what's it like? What do they do? What do they stand for?
It's a group of people who come together to pray, to support each other, and to love one another. They have backyard barbecues. Well, or here in New Orleans, they might have had a crawfish boil. I actually think I remember a pig roast one time also. But they just are there to be with one another and to support each other through the difficult life events, a loss of a job, death in the family, and illness, and also to share in the joyful things, the birth of a baby. And in my experience, there have been numerous times, even as an adult, that the members of the People of Praise, who I will call my friends even, have been at my side during joyful moments in my life and also difficult times. I think these are just regular people who have regular jobs, just like you, just like me, who just want to have a deeper faith. They're just my friends. They're no different than anyone else in America.
So, how do you feel, and how does Amy feel, sort of knowing, or how do you feel as a sister, I guess is the most fair question, knowing that she's going to go through this process, which we have seen in recent history be so brutal? How does that make you feel as her sister?
Protective, of course. But I think if anybody can handle it with poise and grace, it's Amy. She has always been a person of strength and love and poise. And I think for her to have the courage to put herself out there in front of the country, frankly, the world, and have her own personal beliefs examined and criticized, I admire her. I mean, there's just no better person for the job.
All right. Megan Edwards, thank you. We really appreciate you coming in tonight. And
thank you for
good
having
to meet
me.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Megan.
you too.
Take care.